Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Art Fight podcast. We're here today with our special episode 100. It's a huge milestone, Brian. I want to take a minute before we even begin our show and introduce our special guest to thank Brian. When we talked about doing this originally and said, hey, we should do this weird podcast and have these conversations, that we're having all the time anyway. And we should just for some reason, maybe other people would want to hear these conversations and we should do some kind of a project like this. One of the things that went through my brain was, are we going to actually do this? Or are we just going to screw around and do it 7 or 8 times? And then we'll be just another couple of idiots who started a podcast and never really followed through on it. But here we are 100 podcasts later. And I'm glad to say that I made the right choice because I got on a winning team here at the Art Fight podcast. Brian, thank you for all your hard work on this. You've upgraded us twice recently in the middle of a pandemic, and we're on this brand new, beautiful platform with these brand new, beautiful people who are actually both returning to our show, friends of the show. We're so glad to have you both here to celebrate our 100th episode. One of the greatest writers in the game, Chuck Mindenhall, Nancy Kidder, who's the creator of the Writing and Fighting program at American University. Everybody, cheers. Let's go ahead and hoist one up real quick. We do this a lot. Cheers. Drinking it every time Joe talks, you have to drink.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
There'll be a lot of drinking.
Joe,
yeah.
You guys are still a couple of idiots, but you did.
Right.
Yeah. I understand. We're not absolved of that.
And we did screw around and just do 8 or 9 episodes, but we just reset and did 8 or 9 more. Reset, did 8 or 9 more.
Right.
And made it to, we limped our way to sort of 100.
Yeah, we just didn't change the name, so now we can claim a century.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, it's one of those things too where, and we've made it clear in the past that this is our sort of weird adjacent kind of fantasy, but basically the MMA Beat was the greatest sort of assembly of humans discussing mixed martial arts and all the angles. It was the thing that really brought me into all this many years ago. And so to have Chuck here and to have Nancy also in terms of just writing and how to take complex themes and narratives in a complex sport and make them sort of relatable and exponentially more interesting to even the pedestrian non-fan sort of person. The mechanisms through which we bring people into the sport. So I'm just really appreciative for you guys, and it's truly an honor to have you here for episode 100. And then ultimately, we're just here trying to recreate a sort of a stoner version of the MMA Beat. And so just thanks for letting us sort of play along. So.
No, but in all honesty, guys, congratulations on 100. I don't remember which episode I appeared on, but I wanted to be on this one when you guys asked because I had a lot of fun, just kind of freelance talking about everything, artistic, writing wise, art wise, etc. Even some music, I think we talked about. So it's been kind of cool to get to know you guys, and I'm glad you made it to 100, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, we try to keep it. We try to do as little work as possible ahead of every episode, and keep it sort of loose. And in all seriousness, actually, we do have a certain kind of skeleton of what we're planning on each episode, but we've found really that the format of just putting interesting people in an interesting context and letting the conversation sort of go where it might, it almost always lets us get to the deeper stuff. You know what I mean? We're not so much just talking about, talking to a writer about their latest book and what's that about and which is cool. Or a painter or a movie maker or a fighter or a coach or whoever we might be talking to. But we seem to find our way to the deeper things about but the how, and even the why sometimes, which is way more. Lots of people do the what and the who. We're here for the why and the how.
Well, yeah, it's working, fellas. It's working.
Well, so for us also, it's been one of these things where I think that I'm very interested in process, and we talk a lot of process, artistic process, creative process, and just kind of the general, the art fight part of it, right? Like sort of the perennial struggle that you kind of have to acknowledge, and we all end up sort of communing about in our own ways. And anyway, but ultimately, to see you guys going through, to see how people can apply creative concepts to actually jobs or university studies, or how to modulate sort of the system to sort of accommodate more work that is more creative and more thoughtful. I don't want to sort of do a lot of realming about this, Chuck, but obviously, we haven't talked to you since the athletics sort of explosion or whatever. So we'd be remiss to not just sort of bring it up, into whatever reasonable depth or whatever. But it seems like in a weird way, like kind of the band had to get sort of broken up, or the best record label just had to sort of dissipate, because they just, were too good and at the wrong time.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've thought about that a lot. Obviously, it did feel. I have to say, because I was there exactly 1 year, and it did feel a little bit like we formed this really awesome team. Because those guys, the guys that they put with me, Dan Stupp and Ben Folks and Chad Dundas and all those guys, either you've worked with them or you've been around them long enough for a decade, where you know that what they're made of. And so to be in that group was really kind of cool. And it's weird to me, even still, this has been about 2 months later. It's weird to me even right now that it's no longer going. It felt like it was a pinch me moment that we're in that situation, but the fact that it's ended so abruptly, with really no warning whatsoever is. It's the business, man. The racket is like that, but at the same time, it does kind of suck. You know what I mean? Because I felt like we had we just did this big survey where we talked to all these fighters, and we were doing there was all kinds of stuff in the hopper, man.
Right.
Just to suddenly just be like, nope, that's not happening anymore. That kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah, that survey was pretty amazing. Tell if people missed that, people who might be listening to the show, talk a little bit about that survey and some of the revelations that you guys got from that.
I mean, it was like we hatched the idea to do this big fighter survey. I forget exactly how many fighters we got. I believe it was about 170 total fighters, like spanning all weight classes, every promotion and, everything, gender, we had everything in there. And we talked to these 170 fighters, and we asked them a series of questions about, PED use, cheating in sports, in fighting, rules, just everything, weight cutting, all that stuff. And we, compiled all that data, put it all together, and then came up with features based off of the results. Mm-hmm. And that very week, I mean, it was this big, long it probably took us about 6 weeks to do this project together. And we went through that whole thing. And the week that it was out was the week that they basically cut down the MMA side of the roster, the fight roster in general, because Rafe Bartholomew is another good writer on the boxing side, also got the axe. But it was so weird because you're waiting for this project to come out, and once it does, you can't really celebrate it anymore because you're like, well, all that work, and now I'm standing outside the window with my pockets up, watching everybody. So it was one of those situations, but it was still gratifying the feedback we got from it. I felt like a lot of people thought that was doing some heavy lifting. And
for sure,
people numbers and stuff for anybody out there in sports journalism could use those numbers as part of their pieces and all that sort of thing. So it was gratifying in the end.
The podcast, by the way, the Men in the Myth podcast, I would also, I feel like it's necessary to bring that up because that was one of those things too, where it was just getting to a point where you all had found, producer Chris had sort of elevated up in the podcast, right, and become sort of this sort of hub, or, for you guys to sort of, you and Sean to kind of operate, and it was. I really enjoyed seeing how that, as a person who's doing a podcast that's slowly coming together in its own weird way, it was really cool to sort of see somebody else sort of walking through their own sort of process. But it was so unfortunate because it was such a great podcast. It was one of my favorite. And actually it was kind of the thing that made me feel okay that the beat was no longer, and then it's gone. Right. But you would just really, I feel like, hit your stride with all of that too. It was brutal.
Yeah. And just to be clear though, Chris was a bit player. And Sean was the B side of that. No, I'm kidding, man. Those guys were great. It was a lot of fun, man. And I hadn't really done like a 2-man podcast like that before, so you guys understand this probably better than anybody, but you have to kind of figure that out, the chemistry of how that works. And over time, you get a lot better at it. You can kind of anticipate certain conversations, or when you get surprised, it's a genuine surprise, and you can react in a real way. I thought we were just getting our stride with that thing, and unfortunately, man, that was part of what got cut off in this whole thing. I know Sean too. Like, just having talking to him, that was pretty devastating for him too, because he's still there at the Athletic, but he's obviously he can't do the podcast anymore.
Isn't it kind of weird though that it seems like other sports? I mean, they just canceled college football, for God's sakes, and it's like other sports are sort of like not even going to be here for a while. And MMA is one of the few things that's actually sort of like got some traction again. And it just feels like, wow, you just give it a couple more weeks and you guys would have been on Fight Island. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely, man. All of these things that you're saying gave me security up until the moment when it all became very insecure. So
right. Yeah.
I thought for sure with UFC up and running, and the fact that we just had so much going on, I didn't foresee any changes, and all indications were that they were fully behind it. There was no indication that it was going to end that abruptly. So that's the business, man. I mean, as a writer, I've been in multiple situations. The first time I've ever been outright like released like that hurts, because you like to think of yourself as somebody who's not expendable. Right. But once you find out you are, there's a good evaluation process that goes into that too. I think that sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to look at yourself a little bit more and get stronger that way. So in the end, you make the most out of it.
Isn't it funny though? Like I could take an extract of what you just said out of context, and people would think, "Is that guy a fighter? Is he talking about a fight that he lost?" You know what I mean? It's inevitable that I guess if I had a question, it would be sort of, do you feel? Because I feel like it works this way for me at least. But when I see sort of adversity in my own realm, I do take example or inspiration from people that are doing far more dire things, right? Than like, oh, I didn't get this gig or whatever,
Yeah, I think you go through a whole process of feeling better about your situation. You know what I mean? Like, you figure out ways to feel good about it. I would say that I never wane in what I think I'm capable of. It's not like I go, I don't really have big insecure moments like maybe I can't do this. But I do often think about the terrain, and then you think like, should I stay in the fight game? Should I keep doing this? If you can be called, one of the better writers in the sport, but you can't find a gig, and it's not like I can't find a gig right now, but I'm saying like when you're pushed out of a league like that, it does make you think about all those things, man. But like I said, it's just I'm glad that they're keeping it going, and eventually, this whole thing through this pandemic, it just screws everything up, man. And it's like, at some point, things will get back to some semblance of normalcy, and we'll get rolling. But I've got plenty going on. I don't have to. Yeah. You don't have to worry about it too much,
Well, it's important to hear you say that. I mean, like, even for my own like state of mind, and and certainly for the sake of our own little podcast, even though this is something that so far actually gets us no money, it's still something where we feel like we're talking to somebody. Surely somebody's listening to this podcast. But I think one of the things that makes it special to have both you guys here today is I feel like in our own ways, especially Chuck, like the relationship you have with the Athletic and the Athletic platform, I think is emblematic of what I'm talking about, is the idea that all of us think about this dumb, brutal human cockfighting sport as something far more special than that. You know what I mean? And something that's worthy of literature, something that's worthy of poetry, even something that's worthy of talking about as a type of high art. You know what I mean? And I think that's a space that we occupy with the podcast. It's obviously a sort of an elevated platform that the Athletic is trying to talk about sports on. And Nancy, that's of course, obviously, you like literally have a whole college program.
Nancy's getting rich over here. We're all busted, man. Busted artists.
That's basically a platform where you're teaching people how to write based on watching people fight. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's also sort of a very inspired sort of angle on this whole thing, which is that this is a much more deep, serious thing than you might think it is if you just think of it as two people punching each other in the face for no reason.
Oh, yes, no, definitely. And to get into this conversation, I'm the academic. I curate and celebrate the work of people like the great Chuck Mindenhall, who is a big of my class, because my students, they get to see the AJ live one, which for me, that when we found out, Chuck, that you had not, I'm like, where is my face? Okay, I'm looking. When we found out about this happening at I think you called it explosion, Brian, at the Athletic, we all, we rarely put the bat signal up, but we all texted each other. It means so much because you represent the high quality of literature, of what you can do with words to express this martial arts and combat sports, which is this a human condition that we do with our bodies in a sporting event. And, so I'm lucky that I just get to share your words, inspire my students. And what I also enjoy is that we'll take one of your articles. I think I remember a student coming to me with the article you wrote about Weili Zhang after she had just won. And I have them go through bit by bit of your words. And so they can see the techniques that you're using, about how you opened up with her body, her arms akimbo, and how they learn, how that actually you learn about her character, and you understand what her emotions are through her body. And then your figurative language, which is always just freaking incredible. So I am so lucky that I get to use this, because my students also using the vehicle of combat sports, which, come on, I get to do YouTube videos of, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, and then we get to explore it. I have to say, I kind of use that as the catchy, flashy thing. But once they get in, they see and understand what quality literature can do.
Yeah.
And so, no, I am so lucky that I've found this community, Brian and Joe, and Chuck, because I came on your podcast a year ago. Mm-hmm. I realized there's more kind of fight nerds, people who overthink these type of questions, about the societal effects of combat sports. And, so I really appreciate, Ryan, that you and Joe, that you fostered this.
Mm-hmm. Well, why think about it if you can overthink about it? The other thing I want to say is Nancy, one thing that's been great about connecting with you is the fact that since March, since we've been in these various states of lockdown around the country, in these various places we're located in, I've found myself, doing all sorts of different things in terms of maybe I can learn more about this thing by watching some videos, or I'm going to click through this and I'm going to work out with this MMA fighter for the morning or whatever, things like that. And I've had a really good time with you and your class and your guests, Nancy, with all the various Zoom meetings we've been doing on and off. We'll obviously give everybody's information by the end of the podcast. So, and I know that many of the people who are following us and following Chuck are also following Nancy already. But we've really enjoyed being able to be a part of some of the discussions and things that we've done, over the last several months, because that's been it's been interesting to me, because it's really given me an inside look at who these students of yours are. And when I see them, engaging and giving their comments, it's oh man, these kids they've been watching these fights. They know what's what. And they're seeing these angles through the same kind of lens that I might be looking at these angles through. It's not just I'm trying to figure out who to bet on, or I'm wondering, just, some just trivial, mundane level of what you might be interested in the fighting. These guys, men and women who are in your class, they're obviously much deeper in there, thinking about it and talking about it. And I saw on Twitter today, I follow a Hemingway account that's like, just Hemingway quotes, and stuff like this. And it was a quote about bullfighting, of course, but there's plenty of quotes in there that you'll get day to day that'll be about boxing or something like this. And it's like, it's interesting to me just that there's such a rich history of this stuff both in like serious sports writing and also in, the greatest literature of our country and other countries, where it's like, and not even just the literature, but the art in general. It's such an inherently dramatic place. The combat arena, whatever it is, and anyway. But I've really enjoyed being able to get a better inside understanding of what you and your students are doing by interacting with them in those various online meetings that we've done.
Well, thank you, Joe and Brian, and thank you guys for coming in and being not only talking to my students about how you guys became musician and artists, and that,
By the way, it's also clear that we weren't doing it for the snacks because it was all virtual. So
yeah.
Remember how in college, I just remember in college, basing my day on where the pizza was going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Will
there be pizza there?
I didn't even know there was a club that was about that, but I'm going to stop by.
Or
that's what I'm saying now, because I don't know, we're on virtual American University again. So I am now carving out virtual. Hopefully people still have time for me because I'm going to be reaching out. But I really appreciate it, because I also think this pause gave us time. I mean, Chuck, you guys did that incredible research project. Well, thank you, because I'm always telling my students to look for quantitative information and material. And they always say, MMA, there's none.
Yeah.
But, thank you. But you guys, we've been able to talk about gender and race and long form. And, that's something that, or just, we need to respect written form here and literature and make sure that it stays there, because it's something that will last. It is a way for us to pass knowledge. And yes, we have Twitter and everything, and I'm there, but to actually make meaning and to bring it to a human level, that's the greatest thing about sports.
Yeah.
Everything deserves a prismatic evaluation, as it you know what I mean? Everything should be able to sort of echo through the universe as resolutely as possible. So let's break it all down every which way, everything, right? I mean, there's something valid in everything,
Yeah. Indeed.
Most things. Hey, by the way, so this is a little bit of a turn, but so I wanted to I had something happened to me yesterday, and I haven't even shared this with you, Joe. And I just thought this might be a good place to share.
I haven't seen Brian since March either, y'all.
Yeah, it's getting weird over here, man. No, but I guess one of the things I've been finding interesting about sort of the pandemic and sort of the change in routines and everything is, everyone is inevitably finding new tools or new methods or something, right? Kind of organizing or optimizing something. It's part of the seemingly the human condition, or a primordial response right now. It's maybe it's the intellectual version of prepping, right? It's instead of making edible furniture, I'm gonna,
edible.
Yeah, that's what the preppers have. They have couches you can eat and stuff. Yeah. But I don't know what they're made of. They're probably not very good. But I guess I wanted to share with you guys something that I wanted to get your perspective of. So there's this tool called Descript, and I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but it's a translation tool. You can take audio recordings and it'll translate them. And you can edit the translation. It'll also simultaneously edit the audio. It's a pretty cool thing, right? But they just recently did this thing where it's you can make a facsimile of your voice, such that then you can write words and then it'll create synthesizing of your voice to then the written word. So does that make sense at all?
No, say that. And I think and you're saying translate, but I think you mean like You mean
no. So here's what I'm saying. I'll say it again. So I just Black Mirrored yesterday. This is what's okay. How about okay? But just check this out. I'm just gonna play you. I'll come back and I'll explain it further if we want to keep talking about this. I hope you do. But I've got a little video pulled up that'll show you. The audio is nothing that I ever said. It's just words that I wrote. Okay, and then it automatically created my voice. So check this out. It's a test of my voice synthesized by an algorithm. I never said what you are hearing. I recorded myself reading The Wizard of Oz. Well, only about 10 minutes of the book, and the machine has turned me into a facsimile, a fairly convincing version of myself. I wonder what I might say here that I would never say out loud. There must be certain words I never say, like, I really like squash. This is some Black Mirror shirt. Shirt. Black Mirror shirt. But, so, like, that's weird, right?
Brian, do you think it sounds like you?
It sounds like if I had, like...
It sounds like an affected version of it.
It sounds like I snorted Adderall and also took Quaaludes at the same time.
Yeah, very sharp, but kind of slow and low.
Yeah.
But if I could get that, I could kind of like hijack your voice.
Oh yeah.
Well, so this is where it gets really dark really fast, y'all, because so I showed my wife this thing, right? And the first thing that she said was, would I be able to access that after you're gone?
This is beyond Black Mirror.
Do we actually need Brian anymore?
Well, but to be specific though, you really should put in about 30 minutes time. It says minimum. I did 10, so it will get better as I train it. But I just realized, like, I was, like you have there's just certain thoughts you only have when you're by yourself, right? Like in the shower or something, and you're like, my voice is I'm in the Matrix now, So, because you can't undo that. Like, that's been put through like a cloud something, like that's it.
We don't need actors anymore, maybe? I guess on radio for now.
Oh, wow.
But what could we replace? Do we need professors?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it gets interesting, doesn't it? I wonder about that myself, because years ago, I always felt like, well, if you're in some kind of creative work life of any kind, you're good, because it's going to turn out that all the regular jobs can be done by computers, but the expression of the individual artist can never be replicated. And on some level, I think we have to call up somebody who knows a lot more about this than I do, because I don't know. But my sense of this is that that's still true on some level, but oh damn! just like
special
like
guest
weird,
number one just
we
landed.
Call up a wizard. I said we need a wizard to tell us about how the AI works. But finishing my thought before we get to our special wizard who just arrived, I feel like this is perfect for you, Matt. Like, I was just trying to say that I wonder if computers and AI will ever be able to replicate the individual expression of the human artist. And then here comes Matt Pauly to talk to us. Matt Pauly, of course, the author of Bruce Lee: A Life. Did we just lose him?
Oh,
who better to talk about the expression of an individual artist? Who better to talk about the expression of the individual artist than a friend of the show, Matthew Pauly? Thank you, Matt, for being with us.
Hey, congratulations on your 100th.
Yeah, Brian didn't even tell us you were going to be on the show, so this is a great surprise.
He snuck me in. I heard Chuck was going to to be here, so I was like,
I was just going through my head. I was like, when's the last time I saw Pauly? Oh, look at this.
All right. It's a party now, y'all. Okay. Hey, before we get going here, everybody, welcome to Chuck's Bar. We're all gonna have a drink at Chuck's Bar.
Yeah. See how Matt has like books behind his face here? I've got a bar behind mine. That's how
that's how you know the difference between a book writer and MMA journalist.
Hello, Fernanda.
Hello.
Look at that.
You guys look great.
Hello.
I've been watching you. I've been lurking in the shadows. Just waiting for my cue.
I love like pulling all of these people from the Athletic together. It's sort of like you don't know where they've been. Like I didn't know if Chuck was going to have like a beard down to his waist or.
Well, I
You
had
know.
a beard down to my waist, but I shouldn't.
So I apologize. I know it's crowded, right? But I just wanted to make sure that we had a celebratory moment. We appreciate all of you guys so much, and you've been huge part of sort of the spirit and ongoing sort of gratification that we get for even doing this. So thank you guys again, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Hand gestures to like not step on people. Like, no.
Or Mario.
Yeah. So Matt Pauly. Hey, did you see? I was watching. I couldn't help myself, but can you guys see this? Let's see. Check this out. Look at
man,
this.
Look at that.
Holy shit! I was skinny back then.
Look how
That
relaxed.
was Luke.
The leather jacket is pretty dope.
That was the strangest place to record the MMA beat, because that table, like, so we had traffic behind us. A lot of times the sirens would be blasting through there, but it's looking out at a workspace. So there's all these people, like 20 people, Matt? Something like just sitting there doing their work, all in an open environment. So you're just shouting towards them. It was so very weird.
That was it was right after Strikeforce had been acquired.
All right, the good old days, the Monopoly days.
Yeah, and Matt, you had just put out this new book about your MMA journey. So things were very different. But what was really cool is at the end of that, you actually mentioned that I've started on my next project, and it is the Bruce Lee autobiography, and everybody was just like, wow,
Yeah, Bruce, man, the Godfather. That dates me. That dates that photo because it took like a decade to finish that damn book.
It's a big book. In your defense, it's a big book.
That's true. I tried to put the time to good use, but I lost a little track with the MMA. Tell me, guys, what's going on? Like, are you in Florida, Indian reservations? What are you guys doing?
Bar.
I don't think of MMA.
Yeah, Fernanda, why don't you tell us like what track the UFC for us? Where have they been? Where are they going?
Oh Jesus, I'm taking a hiatus, guys.
She's just here to drink. She's just here for the drinking.
No, I'm a little like I've been watching the events, but like sort of trying to shield myself from MMA for a little bit.
Yeah.
Last I talked, they were in Vegas. To my knowledge, to my recollection, that's where
that's right.
We're still going down.
Do you think it's going to be sort of like if you get far enough away from MMA in this sort of time, do you think that it'll be sort of the same thing as going back to your high school or something where you're just like, wow, everything seems so small now? Like if you get back to it, if you get back to MMA, will it feel like the chairs are a little smaller? Like, oh, I used to be really stressed out like when that happened. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if it'll feel like that.
Because you get like distancing from it, and then the perspective changes. I don't know. Maybe I hope so. Because I let my life be completely ruled by MMA for 10 years, so I feel like maybe a little bit of perspective is going to be helpful. But I haven't gotten there just yet.
Well, you're another one where it's because we were talking earlier about the Man and the Myth podcast, and well, actually, it was such a fantastic podcast too. I really appreciated, and I was telling Chuck earlier with their show, it was the same thing where we got to see an evolution of an idea, and whether it was somebody being sort of whipped to sort of deliver something every week, and you didn't really feel like it sometimes, or whether you were really into it, it didn't matter, right? Like I'm sure that it was all those things at different points, but ultimately, you really kind of came into it, So it's cool. It's sort of like, I don't know. Everybody has like that band they were into that never really made it big, but it doesn't take away from what they did. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you weren't on a big platform. I guess I'm just saying like it never got to be its fruition. All you guys. I loved it.
It was cool. I feel like the Daniel Johnston of like.
Yeah. There you go.
Podcast. I like it. I'll take it.
Right.
All the horrible mental illness thing that was not pleasant, but yeah, I mean. It was very like I didn't get as much time to develop as the Min and the Myth, and like you said, it was a little bit of everything. Like I really enjoyed it, but it was torture at the same time. So it was really abrupt. Like one day it was just like it's not happening anymore, and I was both completely distraught, like legit. I cried for days, like sitcom crying, like under the covers, because I was in Canada, so I was literally under the covers, like crying. I failed everyone who loved me. Mom, I failed, and my mom's like, "What is a podcast?" So, I don't understand this. We still love you, baby. At the same time, I was a little relieved. Like, okay, that's a weight that's been removed from my week. I was just listening to it the other day, and it's so funny because I'm like, oh, I did that. Like, I actually wrote that whole thing, and I did that every week, and I got guests every week, and I did it all by my. Well, we had a producer, the same producer that Chuck and John had, was awesome, but he wasn't a part of my podcast. He just listened and gave me free therapy sessions because every podcast episode began with, well, Chris, this sucks. This is horrible. I'm sorry. You're going to have to deal with the shitty thing that I put out today. And he was always like, I'm sure it's great. You're doing amazing. Chris Jenner with the camera, like, you're doing amazing, sweetie. That was the poor guy. He should get hazard pay for having to deal with me. But yeah, it was really challenging, and now like it's so weird because it wasn't that long ago. But looking back, I was like, oh wow, I really did that thing. But I can say right now there are news coming up on that front. I'll give you guys.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, I'll leave it at like it's very mysterious.
Very mysterious.
Working on the 100th episode of Art Fight, that you left this little nugget of news.
Especially for you guys. I haven't even told everyone on my social media yet. And that's how you know it's important, because I tell literally everything.
Well, I'm excited for that. And then, Matthew, I think that you've probably gotten, you've evolved, right? You've made it. You did your executive producing experience, and then also your jackets have probably evolved as well.
That's right. They're mink coats now.
Nothing but fur.
That's right.
I enjoyed. Hey, Matt, I really enjoyed. I haven't had a chance to actually say this to you beyond maybe on Twitter, but watching the debut of the Bruce Lee documentary on ESPN, I really enjoyed following along with you that night, because you were like doing a great job of like, it was almost like I was watching a commentary on the DVD, because it was like every time something happened, Matthew would be like, that's exactly right. Also, don't forget about this. And then other times it's like, that's incredibly wrong. Why are they saying that? And so it was really a great, like, enhanced experience to actually be able to follow along to your commentary while I was watching that.
Yeah, thank you, man. I think the lesson is don't put out something without allowing your executive producer to fact check it. They sent it to me 2 days before they released it, and I was like, guys, I actually do know a little bit about this subject. Why did you send this to me earlier? Yeah. But I think they were working with the estate, and there were certain points they wanted to make on their behalf.
Sure.
So that's how that turned out. But yeah, it was great to see the documentary get out, something based on my book. I waited a long time for that, so that was a real pleasure. Yeah,
and all in all, I mean, I think you would agree with this. All in all, a fucking fantastic documentary, a great movie, and really a wonderful, especially with ESPN now being like the home of MMA as far as UFC is concerned. I love the way that documentary just really sort of highlighted, his role in just bridging the gap for people and saying like, what if this was the case? You know what I mean? And now here we are where we're actually watching all these ideas play out in real life.
Yeah, I think that's the amazing thing is that martial arts was never really considered a valid sport in the culture. It was like some weird off.
Oh no.
Also, it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
He's back. Hold on a second.
Hold on.
So, but no, before I get cut off again, it's great to see that ESPN validating sort of Bruce Lee as a part of the sports culture as well as just the artistic and the celebrity.
100%.
Matt, can I tell you that my mother-in-law, who really doesn't follow much sports at all, but thankfully was promoted, and because of COVID, I think people were desperate. She watched that and just loved it. She called me and told me all about it. So I'm assuming it performed pretty well.
Yes. When you get the mother audience, you know you're doing all right.
The only downside I would say is the resurgence of the age-old discussion of would Bruce Lee beat insert name in the office.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't love those conversations.
My favorite story was I was on some one of those long threads in some forum, and they were having a 13-page argument over whether Bruce Lee could beat the Hulk. And I remember thinking, wow, we've really gone there, haven't we? So he has this kind of iconic status. When anybody asks me, I say he would need to do a little grappling research before he wanted to get in the cage. The sport has evolved significantly since 1973.
What's our conclusion, though?
Ooh, did I freeze?
Yes or no? Does he beat the Hulk? We need to know.
Oh no!
Wow, Matt, come on!
This
playing hard to get.
Matt is playing the distance game. He's in and he is out.
I'm bridging the gap.
I think
Chuck, I wanted to ask Chuck, where are you at now?
I'm in the same spot. I'm in Connecticut still.
Yeah. And who are you writing for?
Well, right now, freelancing for The Ringer again.
Excellent. Still good.
Yeah, so that's the most public thing going on right now.
Excellent.
I'll look tomorrow. Yeah.
When we had you on, Chuck, when you were on as our solo guest on the podcast, we ended that podcast talking about the possibility of the fact that we had yet to see the great contemporary MMA book, like the fight or whatever, that sort of thing, like something of that level written about the sport of MMA. And we're assuming that you are the person who will be writing that book. And I'm not going to push you too hard, but I'm just wondering, have you been sort of doing a little bit of research in some of the time that you've had recently during the time that we're all sort of have time to do that?
I mean, Jesus Christ, man.
Looks like I'm freezing, man. Sorry, guys. I'm out of here now. No, man. It's still fully on my mind. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And also too, people don't realize, but a lot of times, I mean, and very seriously here, and I think probably all of us can relate to this. At the end of the day, if you want to actually get creative work done, you have to do it. And also, a big part of doing it is often sort of thinking about it and letting it sort of find its roots in your brain. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I got it. I like to take a walk every now and then. It's really good for you.
Absolutely, man. My idea is to come in about 5 years longer than Matthew.
I've been explaining the percolating theory to my wife for many years.
Exactly. Well, David, there's a great David Lynch book that anybody interested in creativity should read. David Lynch's, I think it's called Catching the Big Fish. And in that, he talks about when he was a young kid, his neighbor friend, a little kid who lived next door to him, his father was actually a painter, like not a house painter, an actual painter who made his living, painting landscapes and stuff out west, where David Lynch was brought up. And at some point, one of David Lynch's sort of foundational, entrees into the art world was he became this guy's studio assistant when he was still a high schooler. And he realized early on that a huge part of painting was just like sitting on the couch reading the paper. Like this guy like spent a lot of time not painting, but he learned that it was like, yeah, but that's kind of all a part of it. Like I need to get into my studio. I might need to like fiddle around and straighten some stuff out and mess with this and mess with that and maybe do a few things here and there. But then I'm just going to kind of hang out and turn on the radio and I'm working and I'm doing things, but I'm not ready to actually paint anything yet, you know, and then he would be, and then it would be there, and it was there because he took the time to percolate, as Matthew said. So it's one of those things that I think people from the outside don't get it, but it's like it really is required. It really takes time for your ideas to come together. And I know as a writer, it takes time to work on something, and then you must absolutely get away and do anything else.
I feel like I can hear the gears grinding in Fernanda's head right now.
I've been percolating for like a month now.
I feel like you're one of those people where it's like I think you openly sort of lament the pain of the process, rightfully so, right? But at the same time, I'm always wanting to sort of like console people like, you know, that are feeling that way, to say like, no, this is just a natural, like to do nothing is to do something very often, right? Or like you don't need to feel bad about not getting so much done or whatever.
But you won't feel bad. You can read as many productivity books and listen to as you want, and trust me, I do. Creatives and reading creative quotes. It's like, this is a me time. I'm gonna drink my gin and watch channel. Which
speaking of which,
I'll be watching a lot of.
Everybody, cheers! Cheers! 100.
Cheers.
My glass is actually empty already.
You know what? I realized the thing to do. Everybody started offering a master class on something on the internet. Have you noticed this? Like, there's a master class for. I don't know, playing spoons or like whatever. There's a master class for everything now. So I thought about this, and maybe you guys can get in on this with me, because I think it's going to need more than just my brain on this. What about a master class?
That's very meta.
That's gold, Jerry. Gold.
Like, do you want to start a master class on the internet? Well, then you need to take our master class. It's just like a way of cutting right in front of the line, I think, of virtually the whole thing.
Well, there's a cool story of now. I don't know if it's at the Atlantic. I just saw it in my autumn, and it was saying, like, talking about the boom of the master class. And I feel like you're onto something. I feel like on the internet, if you want to make money, you just have to be really fucking confident about whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Pick a thing, go for it very confidently. Don't just never admit you're insecure about it for a second, and you'll make money on it. Like, that's I'm not very confident about it, so I'm not making any money.
Yeah, Nancy, with your writing and fighting panels, by the way, like I feel like there's got to be some sort of next step that you have in your mind. Will you just go ahead and tell everybody what that is now?
Yes, Brian. The next step for the panels for my class, kind of. Well,
but you're on your way to something, though. This is just I feel like that you've just been germinating this thing, right? But it's like, oh my God, like it's so potent, it's so amazing, and it's been like, I don't know. I'm not saying do a master class, but I feel like there's something there.
Thank you. No, well, I actually think that what I do best is I bring amazing people together and have them in to talk about stuff that no one really was able to talk to you about before. And especially with COVID, with the pause and people having that time, you know, like Nanda, thank you for introducing me not only to what really happens as a female sports reporter in terms of what you go through. And I remember the words, impossible lines that you have to be. You know, you can't be too flirtatious, but then you can't, you're rude and you're a bitch, you know, like all of that. And thank you also for introducing me to internet trolls. Nanda. But as a professor, this isn't the internet that I deal in. But like I put up a small video clip of Fernanda just explaining these really great insights into the gender bias. And wow, I got more likes than I've ever seen before, but it was, and that's just.
You got into a very interesting argument with one of those dudes.
Oh, man. But what I find is that bringing people on and talking about things, and I like going to different elements of, we talk about overthinking, but thinking about, when we had Jonathan Snowden and Josh Rosenblatt to talk about long form and writing novels about, or, actually narratives like long form nonfiction, as Matt knows, but delving into elements, we brought in Serena Hoses about autism and being a fighter. And so that has been incredible. So I hope we keep doing it. I have my partner, Tanisha Singleton, Dr. Singleton, who's working with me. We actually have a project going on. I think I told Joe about it. I don't know if I told you, Brian, but we're working with someone who is incarcerated. He's a writer and also owns his own PR firm. And he's a life-term inmate at Parchman Prison in Mississippi. But he's been able to write using his iPhone, and he's published 8 books.
Crazy.
And he works getting other writers out there. He mentors other inmates to work on other people's material. Now, Parchman Prison, I don't know if you guys know, horrible. It is the worst penitentiary in the country, maybe the world. They had some riots recently. He's doing this all, and it's actually misconduct. And he could get further, misconduct for doing what he's doing. But he's managed to do it. So Tanisha and I have actually interviewed him from the prison, and we're working on kind of using that, because he also is a boxer. He trains his inmates in boxing. So that's the project we're kind of working on this summer, but we are going into just exploring other parts of fighting and writing and culture. So
there you go, Brian. You happy?
Well, here's the thing. That was amazing, by the way, Nancy. But I also just realized that what happened there is that you were basically just in a long-winded way saying, "I already told Joe all of this. I just hadn't told you." And so
no. Tell Nanda, Matthew, and Chuck too. So and
that's awesome.
Audience.
Yeah. So now you guys have been sort of our kind of idols in these different areas of MMA sort of journalism and writing and creativity. So we are looking now to you. We are 100 episodes into this podcast. What do you think would be the next step for us, or what advice would you give us? When should we give up, or do we give up now?
Please stop.
Because here's the thing, and I just want to say that when you guys tell us the stories of The Athletic, it was just a day's notice, and then I didn't have this, I wasn't doing the podcast anymore, or whatever. We have no one watching us or checking us on what we're doing at all. We can run completely uncontested with no problem because we answer to no one.
Totally unlistened to.
Yeah, we have. Right, yeah, exactly. We have no governance whatsoever.
So no editors, no audience. It's amazing.
It's actually
the freedom, the unfettered freedom.
Well, clearly testosterone, some PEDs. So.
Anybody advice on anything? At this moment of my life, I just look around and just rubble.
So, Nanda, I hope your project is not going to be recorded in your closet, right? Like whatever the thing is you're about to announce.
Oh no, I'm not about to. Okay, calm down. No, it will be recorded in my closet because of the acoustics. Like it just happens.
Okay.
And where I live, but I think that it's charming. I feel like when Kat Dennings plays me in my life movie, which will inevitably happen.
I like that casting.
You just write that script right now before anybody else takes it. I think that will be an endearing part, just a good visual, So I'll keep recording in my closet.
Okay.
And that's not because I'm too broke to actually afford anything else. It's really for.
I'm getting another beer.
It's for the safety. It's a safe space for you.
Yeah, exactly. Poetic, and it's like the womb, really. I feel like a therapist would tuld read a lot into it.
Right. That's where we like do like our Ravenclaw gatherings in the closets across the globe. We all get in the closets and feel safe.
Say that Fernanda's podcast at the Athletic was my favorite. That was my favorite. I like to listen.
Right.
I dug it because it was almost like the Andy Rooney kind of, final comments on some kind of hysteria that's going on in the fight game, or just kind of always delving into the areas that other people weren't. But I thought it was really well written, really well received, from what I understood. Like the people that I heard talking about it, and don't cry. I thought it was awesome. It was my favorite there. I was really bummed too when they took that out. And
I will cry. Yeah, and it's funny because before it ended, I didn't know anybody was listening to it, and then after it ended, I had not a lot, but a lot from my standards people.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, you guys are listening.
Well, that's when you find out how many people listen is when they take it away.
Yeah,
right. You realize there's an audience. You're like, oh, who knew?
It's like that fantasy about people in your funeral say nice things about you.
That's exactly right.
I'll just return compliments sincerely because I don't listen to a lot of MMA podcasts just because it was such a big part of my life that my safe space was kind of my podcasts are not about MMA, and I really enjoy listening to you, and I listen to the co-main a lot.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing two people podcasts like yours and when it's analysis and stuff, I feel like it seems easy in a way, but at the same time, the scene is so crowded that you have to do something that really engages people for it to actually be something worth your time. And with you guys, I think it was just really charisma. You guys had chemistry and the charisma, and it really came through. And obviously the knowledge, but that we know. And I was really bummed about yours too. That was a conversation that we had when the great rapture happened at the end.
The great rapture.
What's going to happen to your podcast? That was a big moment for us. And
when MMA is the only sport going, take down the MMA team. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird to me. Hey, really quick, y'all. When Matthew and Nanda joined us today, we were looking at that old photo of Matthew on the MMA beat, and you mentioned Strikeforce, and I can't hear the word Strikeforce right now without thinking about Daniel Cormier. And if you guys want to for a second, can we talk for a minute about the fights that are coming up this weekend and sort of just get everybody's, not necessarily, what you think is going to happen or who's going to win, but just what are you interested in about it? Matthew, are you keeping track of any of this at all? It sounds like you haven't been watching a whole lot of MMA recently.
No, I'm going to wait till Chuck says something and then disagree with him.
That's good. That's
I'll
good.
be like,
That
no way.
makes for great. That makes for great podcast, guys. Thank you for being here.
I haven't. I'm kind of in the same boat. I've taken a little step back and been, I pay attention a lot less than I was 2 months ago, but I'm still obviously paying attention.
Sure.
I'm still doing the occasional piece, like at the Ringer, like I mentioned, and I'll have a piece coming out tomorrow. I think for me, I like the idea of Sean O'Malley. I want to see, there's a certain feel for guys like this feel in the air that they have something a little beyond the norm. And I feel like he's handled it properly. And then there's weird, almost cosmological, things that happen that you're like, wow, this guy, he's got some things on his side too, behind the curtain, it seems to me, coming back from that suspension that he had and everything. So I kind of want to see if this is a transcendent moment for him, because I feel like the trilogy that's being, the trilogy is a big fight, but it's not like a sexy fight in the way that that typically sells. It's just more of the bang for your buck, and the bang for your buck I think goes to Sean O'Malley, right? I think that people are paying attention to this guy.
Yeah.
I think he's subtly kind of like a main event in this. It's very strange, but I feel like he's kind of got that thing going for him. So I want to see what happens there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also too, the ingredients with that fight are such that, that essentially for Vera to do well against him, it almost requires, who knows, but from the outside looking in, 2 days out, it looks like his plan of action needs to be to rush in and stay in his face. And that sounds like a great fight, and, because if he tries to stay on, tries to play it all with O'Malley, it looks like O'Malley can just tear you to pieces. Essentially, so far it seems that way, and I think I'm a big O'Malley mark right now, but I also understand that you're watching him sort of move up through these ranks and fight these guys who are obviously not up to his speed, then fight somebody like Eddie Wineland, who is a tough guy with heavy hands, but a guy who's like further along in the game and maybe has that veteran knowledge to beat him, and then he knocks him out cold, man. That punch that came in the last fight, I couldn't believe it, man. I did not see that coming at all. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, fight's over and somebody's unconscious. And it was like, I did not know that was going to happen. And so I just think I really, so far so good. I mean, O'Malley really seems like something special. We were lucky enough to have his coach on with us earlier in this run up to 100. And they do a podcast together that I followed on YouTube, and they just seem like the next generation, like these young guys who really have their heads on straight, are sort of like coming up in the wake of Conor McGregor and see what he did and how he did it.
They have some really good examples to follow that they're unabashedly
really
following, and I really
100%.
appreciate that. Right, where they're like, we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's been laid out. Like, the method for success is this. I'm modeling myself after Adesanya and McGregor's ascent and all that.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
The narrative there too, that I feel like Sean and Marlon are very similar. I on a first name basis, that's just how I am. In Brazil, we just call everybody for Marlon, I think that they're very similar in a few ways, but at the same time, they're kind of opposites. I feel like Sean O'Malley, from the get-go, people have been expecting him to do good. He's one of those guys really brought up to be a star. Marlon Vera was the opposite. I feel like he's just a tale of just unlikeliness. He's the guy who came from Ecuador. Like, we hadn't even, that's not a traditional MMA crib. I think it still isn't, but I'm sure it wasn't when he came up. And he wasn't a guy that we were necessarily looking at. He had to really claim him. He had to really carve his spot there. He had to claw his way into it. And Sean, like, he's already been treated like a star. He hasn't had that many fights. Like, and I'm not saying that it's unwarranted. He's incredibly talented, but Vera has been the opposite, right? He had all these fights. He was that type of guy who, I'll fight anyone, and I'll fight anyone in 2 divisions. Like, he really had to make himself noticed, while Sean was sort of handed that in the way that he was handed the special UFC treatment. So I'm just intrigued. Like, I feel like this is just such a beautiful matchup because I don't know, the symbolism of it and also Merab Dvalishvili, I don't know, that's how I say it. He's fighting, and he's my irrational favorite. Like a random guy that I love for no apparent reason. Charming. He's just so delightful. I don't know if you've heard him speak, but he's so cute, and just how Jermaine Sterling is just. So that's where my heart is on Saturday.
I love that you bring up the heart, because that's so much of fighting, right? Like, my problem with, if we're going to go into the trilogy, or do we want to stay in the undercard?
No, go with the trilogy. It's all right.
I'll go with the trilogy here because I love a trilogy. I'm into boxing, and I think of Holly Frazier and Gotti Ward, and I think of these phenomenal fights. And the one I remember, I think it was after the second fight with Gotti Ward. Ward said, like, now I know what it's like to fight my twin. Because it was constant banging, and it was, I think those fights were so close. I don't think of DC and Stipe as twins, obviously, at all. So that's why I think it's intriguing. But it is so personal, none of what you said, because I really love both of them in different ways. Like, I'm wearing my Stipe shirt, and I'm happy to say OHIO because we can't say that this 2020. And I can say that for Stipe. I have some like Ohio Midwestern. He's a firefighter, but then DC, this is his last fight. So
right.
I'm actually kind of not wanting to have this fight happen because I really don't know who I want, or I don't want either of them to lose.
They kind of, I mean, it's funny that you say that. I was talking to a friend of mine before we got on the podcast today, and he's a fight fan too. He's somebody who has been in my, Twitter threads during the fight. So if I do that on Saturday night, he's in there. But we were talking about that same thing, is that, DC doesn't really have doesn't have the personality of a Muhammad Ali or something like that, but he does have that quality that you love in a champion, where it's like, this is somebody who stands up for like honor and sportsmanship and all the good things, and also is a fighter who's, never, gotten, tired out or anything. He's just this grinding fighter who represents all the best qualities that we like in the sport in many ways. And who's also just a very charming guy, and who is about to end his career, and we want to see him win, but then Stipe to me is sort of like this turn of the century, like, Gangs of New York character, where it's like he's just this, like, comes from this immigrant stock from Europe, and he doesn't have a lot to say, but he says it with his fists, and this whole thing. And the fact that it's a real trilogy. I mean, it's a serious real trilogy, where it's not like it's just, I mean, if it had been two very close fights, that would be interesting too. But it was two finishes by either fighter. I mean, both these guys have stop the fight, so it's a lot to say, to like see like what's going to happen. I actually think that, given the way the last fight worked out, I think that Cormier, has the upper hand, but he's obviously vulnerable, so I don't know what's going to happen there. But I kind of don't want to see. I'm kind of sad already for whoever's about to lose.
I feel like the weirdest thing for me. I feel like the weirdest thing for me is that I feel like that Stipe is a bit unsung in his sort of like, he's one of those fighters that people are always going to be like, I don't understand why his appeal is not more, automatic, Cleveland, right, or whatever. Like, what else do you want, people? Like, for fuck's sake, like a marketing department could have drawn this up and been like, that's not possible. Really, like his own. Like his bros just kind of help him train, and like it's just forget about it. Like there's no way that this is real.
Not like he's a firefighter.
But for some reason, this doesn't just fully just satiate everyone automatically. And then on the flip side of it, you got Cormier, who's like run the table except for this Jones sort of problem,
right?
And then but ultimately that can all be forgiven if he just hadn't have lost that one fight with Stipe. You take that off the record, everything is like, oh, this is the greatest of all time, done, forget about it. So what I think is so funny is that not funny, but just weird, is that both of them have this kind of workmanlike, unheralded sort of status that ultimately whoever wins, the rewards, especially now through the prism of COVID and everything else that's happening right now, there's never been, I don't believe, like sort of less care about the baddest man on the planet right now. And that sort of, I mean, I could be wrong about that, but it feels like that, right? That there's not this overarching sort of gravitas, sort of this anvil over everyone of information that's about to drop, like it's not really there. So I find it strange that there's two unheralded people that are going up for a sort of a slightly underrated sort of title.
I agree with you there. I was just actually telling my boyfriend the other day, I was like, I don't know why I'm not more excited about this fight. And of course, there's like just the general thing that is happening with my life in MMA, but like in general, like how and that's the thing, like I was just telling him, I feel like this should feel bigger. Yeah. Because like I said, I feel like this is such a compelling narrative. And it is really the baddest we're always talking about, right? Like it's such an easy storyline to tell, the baddest man, and we say it so flippantly, and it doesn't always mean it. But in this case, like I feel like it is. Like there's this just huge title on the line and this amazing narrative, and it should feel bigger than it is. And I kind of, and again, I feel like it's intuition. We can't really. Whenever we talk about how the fights feel big or feel small, it's weird because we can't really put our finger on it, right? We're just going by intuition. But my intuition is with you there that this one kind of like should feel more momentous than it actually is.
You ever wonder if like in these types of fights that your emotional kind of investment into it happened early, like, or your lack of, because this type of fight is like when when DC beat Miocic the first time, I think a lot of us just assumed that was going to be put aside. We wouldn't see a second fight. And I felt like the UFC was reluctant to do that. They were reluctant. They were reluctant for all the reasons you just mentioned about Miocic becoming a champion again. I think not the most marketable guy, and they don't sugarcoat that sort of thing. They kind of want people in there that are going to move the needle a little bit. But I think that a lot of people, because there were these options for Cormier at the time. It was either going to be a Jones trilogy. There was talks of Brock Lesnar at the time. Do you remember these things? And I think a lot of people really kind of latched onto those emotional. Like they wanted to see those things through. When it didn't happen, it was kind of almost like a digression that we had with the Miocic series. So it's almost like this trilogy is an extension of the original Detour or something. And so then you get into this point where you can't muster the kind of passion you think it deserves. It's really weird, but I've seen this type of thing in the fight game a lot. But I feel like it's established way before the matchmaking. It happens well back. It's like some kind of disappointment hovers over it the whole way or something.
Oh no!
I can really see that. I mentioned the biannual Phantom Brock Lesnar appearance.
Yes, so many people wanted to see that. They wanted to see that kind of fight, or the John Jones thing resolve itself, or just those types of things. And in the media, those things were really trumpeted up as possibilities. And I think when people wrap their minds around these possibilities, they want that. And it almost seems like you're getting consolation prizes the rest of the way, But that's unfortunate because this one, it is a great trilogy. It should be getting a lot more fanfare. But I always think that these things, somehow they're intercepted, it's emotionally intercepted earlier in the process somehow.
But in a highlight reel, it's going to look great.
Yeah, it's good. Both fights were awesome, man. Both fights were awesome so far, so it's going to be good.
Can I ask a question? Well,
Yes.
I have so many. If DC loses, do you still retire?
Let's go to Matt.
I feel like DC is the John Lewis of MMA. Someone said he wasn't the Ali. Yeah, I mean, who knows? The only thing I'll say is I've never met an MMA fighter who retired when he should.
Yeah.
So that's true through boxing and whatever. So they usually think they've got one more in them.
We like to think of Cormier as this extremely level-headed, down-to-earth fighter. A guy who can actually communicate the fight game to people lay people who can't understand everything that's going on. But and he's been very rational with his career, when he wants to end it. But I feel like if anything trumps him being rational in the end, it would be something like a John Jones trilogy possibility, right? Something in the competitive nature. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's 50-50 even still. If he gets through the fight and he's the champion again, I mean, I feel like it could go either way. But I can't help but think if for some reason they dangled the John Jones trilogy, that he would take that because he has to live with that if he doesn't do it, And I feel like he doesn't live with it very well.
Right. Yeah, I think it's hard to dangle it given the fact that he's lost it twice, but I think you're right. He would definitely do it. And I almost think that if suddenly if he wins and then all of a sudden Brock Lesnar comes into the cage on Saturday night, I could see him going for that too. Just let me just frost the cake a little bit before I leave. Yeah. Sorry, Fernanda. I must see Brock Lesnar back in the cage, Fernanda.
Take this ghost once and for all. No, we're not anymore.
I got a knife tattooed on my chest during COVID.
I swear. One of my favorite things is just seeing when that now I know exactly how to push your buttons, Fernanda. That was it's so nice to figure out what people's natural point of uncontrollable explosion is. And for you, it is Brock Lesnar.
I have many buttons.
Sorry, Matt. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say it's so nice to not follow MMA and know that like you can still not follow it and know what's going on. We're still talking about Brock Lesnar.
It's true. Yeah, you can take a break. You can take a break anytime
You
you
take
need
a break and then they just recycle these. What is he? 65? What the fuck? He's on Social Security.
Still ripped though, still shredded.
Yeah, I mean, if you pump it, like I don't know how big the syringes are to keep it that way.
Oh, they're big.
That is very. You're just accusing Brock Lesnar without having
How
it.
dare you? How dare you?
No, I'm sure it's all natural.
And I don't feel.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Please do.
Please.
So hypothetically, if one was working on a Hollywood biopic of Bruce Lee's life,
Mm-hmm.
and the last scene is him fighting the Future, which is the world's best MMA fighter, who would you in this film, hypothetical film, have Bruce Lee, an actor playing Bruce Lee, fight?
GSP.
Oh, I
Brown.
it,
I'm very enthusiastic about this. Just, any other answer is unacceptable. Please go.
GSP
Well-
was on the list. Thank you.
like when you ask that question, intuitively, my very first answer would be, I'd love to see him fight Israel Adesanya. I think that would be really exciting, very cinematic possibility there if the two of them fought each other. And I think that would be a little bit because I mean Israel is obvious. I think I'm not actually recollecting exactly how tall Izzy is, but I think you might even be able to sort of reference a little bit of the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fight in the staging of that choreography. So that'd be fun.
Gotcha. Yeah, John Jones also got brought up in that. context.
John Jones would be almost even better because you could definitely do it with him.
Do the Kareem.
I feel like it would need to be like like sort of the early version of John Jones. That's why Adesanya I think is such a solid pick because Jones now has like there's some sort of there's patina on that whole thing now. You know what I mean?
We'll put it.
And,
Chuck, steal that.
By the way, like anytime that anybody I know, like Joe, you're a great writer. Whenever a writer says, "Oh, that's a good bit," and it happens to be anything that I was near or said, I always feel really like grateful. Like, oh, that was like a moment that happened for something, right? I mean, don't make Chuck do it, but I'm just saying, like, thank you.
No, but that's a good way of. I think that's a really good way of expressing like John Jones then versus John Jones now. There's it's a fine thing that is it's showing its age in a beautiful way.
Do you remember what it felt like? Do you remember what it felt like? Like, I just remember what it felt like being in like the whatever you call it, the Buffalo Wild Wings type of places or whatever, like seeing like the pay-per-view on back in the day, and seeing John Jones on the screen, and just being like, holy shit, man, this is like, people don't know who this kid is. And this is insanity. He seemed like he was from another planet, and Adesanya has that vibe now. Whereas Jones kind of feels like there's been enough even proteges of his or sort of vague facsimiles of him that it's become almost a tired aesthetic unto itself. Like another oblique kick is just another oblique kick,
I think that with Israel Adesanya, at least you have a guy who almost, I feel like, would pay homage. Like his fighting style pays a little homage, right, to a guy like Bruce Lee. Like he likes to put on that type of performance, and I think he would accommodate a Bruce Lee in that style. Whereas a GSP, who would be the obvious choice, that's a nightmare matchup for Bruce Lee. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would actually be tough.
Are there any votes for Conor McGregor?
I thought there would be. I would be okay with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so over Conor, man. I just honestly, I think Conor still has, the potential to still be, an incredibly exciting fighter, but his whole, I feel very disappointed in the whole Conor situation, frankly, just the whole thing. just like what he has done and hasn't done with fighting, and then everything that's happened outside of the ring.
We should write a letter. We should write a letter.
I just right now, Sean O'Malley and Tyson Fury are my favorite Irish fighters right now.
In a Bruce Lee biopic, though, like I feel like he might make sense because you're not talking about a guy like Joe who's like paying attention to politics and the activity.
Yeah.
You're probably dealing with a fan who would be, ooh, Conor McGregor, you know.
Yeah, that's true. And also, too, a guy who would be really interested in doing a film thing. You know what I mean? He'd be Conor McGregor would be like, hell yeah, I'll do that. And he'll be like, it'd be sort of like the Chuck Norris fight.
Yeah. Bring that cash, though, Matt.
Yeah, I know. His asking price might be a bit high, but height wise, he'd be also appropriate.
Leg and give him one of these.
How tall was Bruce Lee?
5'7".
That makes sense.
130.
5'7", 5'8" with the attitude.
That's right.
That's lean. That's pretty damn lean.
Yeah.
I should just go full Brazilian and say Jose Aldo, you know, just like that's our answer to everything.
Not Anderson Silva?
Yeah, we're over that.
Oh, okay.
I would like to see that. I would still like to see. That'd be fun to see Anderson Silva fight him.
Yeah. Good, thank you guys.
Really
you gave me a good name.
Like 5'7", that would make sense, but Anderson would also be a much taller situation.
Matthew, do you have any other questions you would like to ask us that will help us understand why you're asking them?
No, I just been working on some stuff. So.
Yeah, I think Izzy's a good answer for that. I think ultimately, okay. Although you know, a fighter who I'm not a big video game. It's a long story, but essentially at some point, my wife and I had to upgrade our whole AV situation in our lives. And we decided the best way to do that was to do it through getting a PlayStation, right? There were certain games that she actually had enjoyed playing and wanted to keep playing. I've only been somebody who enjoys games where people fight each other. And I don't play a lot of games, but I'll find a game and just like play that game. So we said, well, let's get a PlayStation because now PlayStation can play Blu-rays. At that time, PlayStation had its own channel selection you could subscribe to, and all this stuff was going on. So I'm looking forward to the new UFC 4 game, which is the only game I'm playing right now is the UFC game. And I can't tell you how disappointed I am that Lando Venata is still not a part of the game. Who deserves to be in the video game more than Lando Venata?
Okay.
There's no Calvin Cater. There's no Dan Ige.
Well said.
Rosenstrike. There's a lot of guys in there that you're like, where are those guys? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think Rosenstrike may have actually been added just the other day. I think I saw something where he had been added to it. But I mean, to me, it's like Lando Venata. It's like every button is a spinning move.
This whole thing, you know what this whole thing reeks of me. This whole thing reeks to me like they couldn't handle the complex names, and so they just left those off.
Yeah. Exactly. It could be partly that. Yeah.
Up in it. I mean, that's the real question. All of us. I mean, literally only.
There he is.
You know.
Chuck Mindenhall looking ripped.
Yeah. Six pack in there that day.
You're still looking pretty much the same. I mean, you're definitely doing better than Luke. No offense to Luke.
Screw that guy.
There's nothing more horrifying than people showing me photographs of my past. So I just try to pass it along. Isn't it weird how like photographs of you from 5 to 8 years ago are kind of weird to see versus like it's fine to see one of you as a child or something? There's something about, I think when you see one from like 5 years ago, it just makes you really understand more like the incremental mortality that you're sort of starting to understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do. I'm freaked out when I see pictures where I'm standing next to people in bars and restaurants because it's like, whoa, you know, we haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, it's really funny. The other day, you know, here in Nashville, we have a couple of different events every month on the first Saturday. That's when most of the art galleries in Nashville will have their new shows open, or they'll have a special event or something like that, so that people can go out and go to, a dozen art events if they want and make a whole night of it. And then on second Saturday, they started a tradition where on the other side of the Cumberland River in East Nashville, which is still part of Nashville, but it's, the other side of the river, which not
the Williamsburg of Nashville.
Exactly. And not that long ago, it was kind of verboten, like you wouldn't make the trip over. So they started their own events, and then they became as mainstream as Williamsburg. They started the East Side Art Stumble. So the other day on Saturday night, the gallery that I actually do my work with, I got a notice on my phone which is just on my calendar all the time, and it said time for the East Side Art Stumble, and I was like, it just crushed me because I was like, God damn it. Like, I can't go to that because nobody's doing that now, because we're going to watch it on a video at 6:00 on YouTube, which we're doing. And that's cool. And it's taking a lot of work for everybody to work that out, but man, it's just not the same. So yeah, I'm feeling it. And just as I was saying that, I don't know if you guys could hear it, but I just heard some thunder in the distance. It's like a Bob Seger song. So that's my life right now. I'm living a Bob Seger song.
There I go.
To bring this back to fighting, do you guys miss the crowds when you watch it? Because
fuck no. I mean, people are lovely, love people. They're great.
I was about to do that, Brian. I was gonna help everybody out with a good woo.
In general, not at all, but no, I think it's great.
Yeah. And do you guys think that'll affect DC or Stipe? Not like being, they've come in with not their normal camps, and then there'll be no one there. I think Stipe will love it, but
yeah, probably Stipe will. I don't really know. I don't know how much of effect that will have. I at first I really loved it. Like from the art fight perspective, I was like, oh my God, this is like some weird experimental black box theater thing, like where there's this crazy like thing happening where there's no dialogue in the play, but everybody's just like enacting this drama. But I've also kind of gotten to the point now where I'm a bit like wish like it would be so novel. Strangely enough, for there to be, 50,000.
I think what happened is it made me realize that there's actually a kinetic, it's not an imagined connection, right? But there's something real that happens that is a tether of interaction and energy between a crowd and a fighter that can very directly affect change within a fight or a situation. And I don't know, like it put all that into a particular relief for me. I definitely, like you, Joe, right? I started off being like, wow, this is like a soundscape. And now I'm getting all this new information about what's happening. And this is great. But almost maybe more in a laboratory sense versus like, wow, there's actually a perspective and a connectedness that is not there, that is actually having a physical effect on what's actually happening or not happening.
Right. Yeah.
That's a weird one to tell, though, like the influence of it. Because
don't tell me I'm making this up.
No, I can't tell you that. Fighters really understand because, you ask them, they all want to say that they're just entirely focused or once I make that walkout, that's where my mind is at. I'm not really paying attention. And interestingly enough, I was there in Brasilia, which was the first event that didn't really have a crowd.
I remember tweeting with you about that.
What? Yeah, we weren't allowed in the arena, right?
Yeah.
The hotel in a media room. And I asked all fighters in the card what it felt like to not perform in front of an arena. And all of them, nobody could like really pinpoint it. Like, oh, it sucked. Oh, it was, some would say it was strange. But, you kind of like, the corners would say, no, it was good because they can really hear my instructions.
Right.
But I do feel like there's an intangible factor to the whole thing. And that card ended up being like the most decisions, tied for the most decisions ever. And then we were all like sort of wondering, and that's weird because you can't really say or quantify that, but you will have to wonder how much of a role does that play? Like when you're about to pull the trigger, or you're throwing a bunch of punches and the guy's against the cage and you could finish it. And does the crowd yelling make a difference at that point? I don't know. I think
I think it's like having a fan on in the bedroom at night or something. It's like a white noise, it's like I think that I would imagine that for a fighter, it would feel like, oh, now I need to feel like I need to use my inside voice, but you end up sort of using your inside voice with all of your actual physical sort of technique or something like, oh, sorry. Like I'm not saying it's that literal, but it does seem like it would feel like that you're almost speaking out of turn to be yelling out even as a corner, just because it's got to be against social norms in many ways, right? Just that we're cultivated into in terms of how we communicate and perceive sound and how that relates to social interaction.
And Dan, I agree with you on this kind of kinetic, communal kind of the atmosphere that comes from the crowd, because what are we? This is Vegas 7. They're starting to blend together.
Yeah.
I kind of liked how they would go to different places and I'd have that different texture and different crowd. I mean, you got to think that this was in Cleveland. I keep on bringing that up.
Right. No doubt.
And I heard, Chuck, I don't know if you were there or Fernanda, I've heard that was one of the best crowds ever. And so I wonder, I was telling my husband, like, maybe they should do theme nights. You know how you do this at like a nursing home or like have or I don't know, something, because it's like I always am like, what
like in a nursing home.
Spice it up. They bring in like for like it's Miami night. I don't know. I'm trying
kind of like how they themed the early cards, where it'd always be like something like beyond brutality or like whatever. They would always have something, whatever.
Maybe they should just change the Zoom background.
Yeah, exactly.
Fight Island.
Yeah. I think the Fight Island thing was sort of an effort to do that in a way, even though it didn't turn out to actually be a Fight Island fight. But no, I agree with you. There's a certain I only really felt it this week, but I actually thought about it earlier this week, and I was like, I feel like there's a certain like monotony that's setting in with what for a minute there I was very interested in, because it's been very weird. All the things you guys are talking about, it's very weird to hear combat in a way we haven't heard it before. It's very weird to hear all the coaches talking. It's very weird to have commentators and referees getting in a fight because they can hear each other in the middle of the fucking action. And then all of a sudden there's a confrontation afterwards that never would have happened before. And it's only happening because they can, because they're criticizing each other in the moment, so that's all been very interesting. But it's sort of like, I think we all would like to be back to a crowd. And if I can, like talk about the glory days of Conor McGregor, it's like just watch those green lights come on in that darkness and hear that Sinead O'Connor come on. I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I mean, it's like,
come on, what do you mean? She's right above you in a smoke-filled thing.
You know what I mean? And there's that. It's like going to see. There's a reason why people see movies at the theater, because there's a communal thing that can happen. Doesn't always happen, but it can happen at a theater where you've got a crowd, and a bunch of people experiencing the same thing at the same time. And and I feel like we all kind of would like to we wish we were back there, essentially.
I joke, but like I get that it feels smaller. Like whatever you do, regardless, it will be smaller without those big moments. And I say that, in Brazil, we're known for our fucking loud ass crowd. As proven by the fact that I just used the swear word. But in Rio, like, it's really hard for me to even watch an Aldo fight without associating it with the bigness of the moment.
Right.
So that's why, like, I can't really imagine Conor McGregor fighting right now. Like, you can imagine certain fights, but his, I think, are so associated with just having all the people that it feels a little strange. I joke because I enjoy the silence, and I do enjoy hearing all the sounds and just not having a lot of people around because people are awful. But I think miss out like on the grandiosity of the whole thing.
Right. It's like they're in a closet, Fernanda.
For the life movie, not to make it about myself, but
I feel like that you should. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, I just would say, from my very limited experience, it clearly makes a difference to fighters if they're around. The energy you get from the crowd, it has an effect. They don't admit it because you can't admit that kind of stuff, but it does. And then the other thing I think it does, the difference is, it's very hard to tell the difference between a sparring day and a fighting day if there's not a crowd, right? And the kind of energy you have when you go into an arena and you feel people around you and they're watching you is a completely different emotional experience. Even obviously, if you're a pro, you do this more often, but a pro fighter fights 3 times a year. He spars 100 times a year. And so the effect, it's a real fight, money's on the line, but that all those accoutrements affect your mental state and your emotional state. So there's no way it's not affecting the way the fighters perform.
some of them did say that when I asked, like, oh, it felt more like a sparring session. And I think
That's right.
some of them benefit from that, and some maybe don't. And
that's well said.
Right? Like, as things will react differently to different types of.
I feel like there's like
well
almost
said.
a part of the ego. I feel like there's almost a part of the ego that must be activated in some way. If you are doing something performative, you are inherently looking for some sort of a feedback to validate or sustain or extend whatever it is that you're doing. True. So I guess I just wonder about, like, in the absence of that, some people have sort of, it's almost like Sufism or something, right? Like, oh, we just go inward and it's an infinite vast world. Like, okay, I get it. That's way easier than going to Antarctica because so. But so I feel. I guess I'm saying, Joe. I think what I'm trying to say is that I think that some people can sort of give themselves these kind of mechanisms for their performative ego, whatever thing is that they need to sort of do that's participatory. Some people can kind of do that in an inward, self-oriented way, whereas I think that others are really almost strictly reliant on, and there's gradients of this, right? But I think that all the way to the other extreme where people are just solely like, I need to see butts and seats, people throwing beer, people chanting, bloodlust, whatever, there's got to be some component for that. But I feel like that there's got to be some sort of net advantage for people right now that either have just kind of a robotic professionalism or have a way to sort of summon that sort of deeper thing from another sort of seemingly antithetical place, but maybe equal in power. I don't know.
I did think
that's very interesting.
What Nanda said about the guys who are gym fighters. I forgot, there was the guy at Couture. I forgot his name now, but he was the
Randy
guy
Couture.
Not the that one. Thank you. But anyway, one of his young fighters that was there who would win every day in sparring class, he would torture people, and then he'd go out and they'd put him in the UFC fight and he'd lose. And they just talked about him constantly. It's this gym fighter who clearly had some sort of performance anxiety. So it is interesting, the idea that by taking crowds away, you actually empower those type of fighters, and disempower the guys like Conor McGregor, et cetera, who clearly are like, adrenaline, approval junkies.
Right. Yeah. Cause it's that thing of, for some fighters, it's like they get the magic when they get under the lights, and other fighters, they lose it when they get under the lights because suddenly they're distracted from their natural thing that they have when they're just in the day-to-day grind of the gym, right?
Right.
Aren't we all like that though, in a way? Like, performance anxiety and like having people watch us affect us so differently. And that's why I love talking about fighting this much, because we like to think of fighters as like this standardized being like, oh, they do fighters like this, do fighters not like this, like, because we want to think, as we do with any high level athletes, like that's our discourse is in general very dehumanizing, if you ask me. But like, with fighters, like, you're going to have people who will thrive in that environment and people who won't, and people who will be able to verbalize that and people who won't, and people who probably won't know how much that affects them, and people who will be super introspective about it, going back, like, how did that change me? So that's what makes it so interesting. Because even the smallest things, like here we are, we can hypothesize death about this just because it's so rich in that sense. It's so many people and so many characters. And of course, they're going to react differently, even though we might just get sort of a uniform sort of way of responding to it, of even hearing about it from them specifically. But it's interesting. I think we're going to go a while without those crowds. So
it's killing me.
Maybe it's just my imagination, but it seems like fighters are way more emotional in these empty circumstances. Like they get on the mic and they're breaking up a lot more. I don't remember that being the case as much with the live crowd. I don't know if it's because they're overcoming something beyond what they normally would to be in there, but it does seem like a thing. Like people are crying a lot more, and they're post-fight.
Yes.
Well, I feel like that's also a testament to the pervasive nature of what's been going on. I feel like a lot of people are rubbed a little bit sort of more raw than what they normally would be, and I think that the normal. I mean, I'm not going to start crying right now necessarily, but I mean, I could, and I probably feel it inside, but. But I've been just insulated enough in the pandemic to not have to break that sort of cellular wall between myself and my raw emotions. So all good. But ultimately, I guess it does feel like people are more raw just in general, and that's just again, right? Fighting is just this ultimate sort of weird microcosm of the human condition, and I I'm not trying to manipulate this conversation necessarily in this direction, but if anybody feels like they want to share something that's particularly like emotional or causes like sort of an uncontrollable amount of upset, I mean, we can...
That's good for the podcast numbers. I mean, frankly,
I don't know. Let's talk to the guy that's just living in a bar. Let's see what he's doing.
I want this to go on as long as possible.
Well, Chuck, I know that you have a family and everything, so it makes sense that you would have a bunker in this way that looks like if from a naked view here, it just looks like if I was just a person that happened to walk by this video cut, right? Like, let me pull you up here. Like, if I saw this, I would just be like, man, that guy's living the life, man.
I'm so glad I know this man.
Look at that. You got the taps.
Yeah.
Wait, you got backlights on the shelves, like illuminating.
Stanley Kubrick, man, come on.
You have a top shelf.
So, Chuck, in that beer that you're drinking, do you actually have it on your kegerator right now?
Wow.
Whoa.
Top shelf, the real top shelf.
Yeah.
Do you have that beer that you're drinking on your actual tap right now?
Yes, sir, I do.
Oh, dang, that's nice.
Oh my god!
All right.
You're doing it right. I thought we were doing it right. I found a source. There's a brewery in Nashville that's actually it's a crazy tale, but literally like a month before everything locked down, my wife and I bought a house. And we were living in this tiny apartment for a few years, like sort of with the idea that we'll just be here for a while. It'll be fine. And we actually made the best of it. We had a great time in that little apartment. But the whole point of it was to, get to a place where we could buy a house. Nashville is an incredibly booming place. It's a very difficult place to be a buyer in this economy looking for a house. We found exactly the place we wanted in one of the neighborhoods we really wanted to be in, moved in about a month before the whole lockdown happened. And
tornado, then subsequent.
Yeah,
lockdown.
before the tornado, before the lockdown, before everything went crazy in Nashville, we got into this place, and I feel like we were very lucky to sort of get this great space to be in once we got stuck here, frankly. But one of the things that made it really great was that about 6 months earlier, I think it might have been a little bit late, might have been a bit earlier than that. But a brewery that had been more toward downtown Nashville actually had moved up here into this area. It's like literally like right down the road from me. And, once all the lockdowns happened and everything, then they loosened up the regulations and they said, hey, these local breweries, we want to keep them going so they can deliver they can now deliver to people's houses. So I have a brewery right down the road that's been regularly dropping off cases on my front porch. So that's my version of your kegerator. I don't actually have the kegerator yet, but I'm good friends with the guy who drops off beer on my porch like a milkman. It's been very good. Yazoo Beer. If you're listening to this and you live in Nashville and you're in the Madison Old Hickory area,
That stuff's good.
Connect with Yazoo. Try the new Sella. The new what's it called?
You need to get paid for this.
They have a new IPA. That's
Yeah.
very
I'd say,
good.
well,
Another hazy IPA, Chuck. You would appreciate it.
yeah, but also I have a bone to pick with Yazoo. Will you please make a beer that's suitable for sort of part Jewish, part German, slightly irritable, middle-aged men that often get a headache from your IPAs, which I love, but it's just, I don't know what it is. I drink one and I get a headache. And this is again why this is why.
Try the stout.
Do you know how many headaches have come from drinking this natural spring water? None.
We're talking about booze. I have to say, because I've gotten into infusing my own spirits in COVID.
Oh, whoa. So what are we looking at there?
Did you say in COVID?
In COVID.
I never dropped an album in COVID.
In COVID.
We say that.
You know, I love it that it's like become like a warm blanket of time.
What's the infusion you have there, Nancy?
Okay, so this is, and my husband. I have to cut this. My husband's doing it. I'm just the bar wine person who's ordering the drink.
The tester.
He's plying you with very rich alcohol, right?
I don't know, because it's I don't know if maybe this is his way of buying cheap and making it sound cool when he says, "Oh, it's craft, it's infused." So it has jalapeno.
I love it.
And jalapeno, cucumber. It's rye whiskey, mezcal.
Wow.
Lime juice.
Damn.
I've been sipping.
Wait, let me see this again. Put it up to the screen. Let me see the color.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My wife's been growing a flower called borage. If you guys know what borage is, it's a beautiful blue flower.
That's not real.
It's real, and also it's an edible flower that tastes vaguely of. I don't think it tastes that much like cucumber, but it's basically got a cucumber flavor. And she's been putting that in vodka, and it's an interesting way to drink vodka for sure. So I'm a fan of the infusion.
Would you have done this pre-COVID? I'm going with it, Brian.
I would maybe, but we've become much more self-sufficient in terms of our everything.
Right?
You name it. Like you figure out a way to do it so you don't have to keep going outside to find a way to get it again. I was just looking up. I just ran out of filters for my furnace, and I just now learned that you can buy filters that you can wash with your hose and not have to buy another one. And I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this? I thought I was a hippie before COVID. I'm the biggest hippie in the world of COVID right now. You have no idea how the levels I've taken the hippiedom to.
It's such a weird thing to like get to the point where you're in your 40s and 50s and you're learning shit that's like always been the case. You know what I mean? Because like when you're in your 20s, you're like, oh, okay, great. Now I learned, and I'm young, and then I learned a thing, and then now I will incorporate that into going forward as things that I know. But like when you get into your 40s and 50s, it's just like, oh shit, really?
I can just buy one of those and put it in my dishwasher.
And then like now, because I actually I went on YouTube. We had pulled a hinge from our door, and so it got stripped.
Oh yeah.
And normally I'd be like, oh my god, this is something, I can't do this. The door might hang for a while before we get someone there.
You figured it out.
I with golf tees and Gorilla Glue.
Ah, yeah.
And then just put it in. I was telling everyone
well done.
What I had done. Yes.
Nanda, did you have something to say?
No, nothing interesting or relevant. No, I was just saying the good thing about having very low self-esteem is that I'm 30. So it's great. But I just gotta say that Chuck is living the ultimate zombie fantasy. Like I always feel like if I'm in a zombie movie, and if I were to like be stranded somewhere during the zombie apocalypse, I would have entered the mall. Now I would have entered a bar. So I think survival chances by a lot because you won't be able to run or be as agile. But I feel like this is where I would like to be stranded in the apocalypse. So I'm not doing anything, Chuck. If your family would like to adopt a bird.
Also here, Fernanda. Come on in.
Hey, so we'll do a little roundtable and wrap this thing up, guys, because I really appreciate it. We've been going for a good bit, and I don't want to keep you. But first, on the line that you're talking here, Nanda, let's pull Chuck up here. Okay, so Chuck, here's the deal. Yeah. We're all gonna. So we're on this podcast right now, and that's all good and fine. But we're all going to watch a fight in exactly this location where you are in 2022, 23, 24, whenever it works. And so we would like to come there. So like, I want to go ahead and understand what are our entertainment options there? Where do I charge my phone? Like what do we have over there? Like we got booze. This is good, but
I got the little meme guy. You know that guy?
Oh,
you know him.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So good.
I got the TV right there. It's
perfect.
Got the TV. We got all kinds of charging stations. I have a brass rail down here, purse holder on the other side of the bar.
What? Dude, come on.
The ladies.
My purse.
I got a boxing belt.
Oh man.
I've got everything in here, man. Everything we need. Booze. What do you need than the booze?
All right, so I wish that I was kidding or whatever, but we're definitely coming there to watch a fight at some point.
Actually, Matt lives close.
That's true. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, and he can bring over some first editions for you guys to like. What is going on here? Wait, I lost him. Wait, where is he? Oh, here we go.
Back, yeah.
Yeah, so Chuck, we need this to happen. But in the meantime, maybe you can tell us about you've got a piece coming out tomorrow in the Ringer. If you want to be as near term about that, great. If you want to sort of profess any big plans or ideas, or tell us what we want to hear, in some elevated form, now's the time.
I wonder what you want to hear right now. No, I do have a piece coming out tomorrow. I'm still going to be dabbling. I kind of like the way it is right now.
Yeah.
Well said.
I like to take a step back sometimes, and I have not had that chance in the last, I'd say, dozen years, because I've been writing about this sport pretty nonstop since 2008.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to enjoy it and reestablish my enthusiasm and everything else on that level. Take the time.
Yeah.
And I have been doing that. I feel like I'm enjoying the fights a little more, things like that. But I'm still gonna be dabbling, and I'm working on other little projects. So that's class to me.
So I have to say, ultimately, your writing being so profound and effective and entertaining and gratifying. I mean, it's been such a gift to all of us. So, we sing your praises a lot, but we try to figure out new ways to do it because it really means something and matters that much. We really appreciate it. I know everybody,
and you'll find new ways to praise it.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that I would love to have you on again, not necessarily like tomorrow, but soonish, right? So that we can, because I would love to talk more about like this perspective that you're getting, because that is so rarefied. Your perspective right now, by taking a break from things and all this in this way that you are, having the history that you've had and the depths that you've gone. I mean, your perspective is incredibly unique. So I'm so fascinated by what things may have snuck up on you or appealed to you or sort of turned against you that you always thought were, things that you really enjoyed about the sport or whatever it is,
Yeah.
If you start taking notes now, we'll be ready soon enough. No, but I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Congrats, guys. Congrats on the 100. That's a big milestone. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then Matthew, do you have anything you want to announce other than that you've got probably something on eBay that's worth $1,000 behind you?
No, but someday, hypothetically, if something happens with this movie, I will come on and tell you all about it.
Oh, that sounds awesome, Matthew. And how's things going? Like the last time we had you on, we were talking about the Quentin Tarantino film, but you also announced, I don't know if you said this to anybody else, but you certainly said it on our podcast, that you were setting forth to work on a biography of George Carlin. Have you started working on that, or is that still in the offing?
That's still sort of, it's been set aside to work on the Bruce Lee stuff, but I think George Carlin will be next.
Okay, great.
Oh, I should tell you, I have not said this publicly, but since no one watches your podcast,
you're safe here. It's all just family here.
It's just us, right?
It's just us. It's literally just us.
You made me think about that. I actually did get on the phone with Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
So he wanted to know sort of he wanted to discuss his representation of Bruce Lee and make his case for it. So that was, I had to say that was a favorite day of mine. So,
okay.
I just, in general, I have to say, this whole COVID thing, I've been social distancing for decades. So I kind of feel like everybody just came and joined me in my world.
Yeah.
I'm like a prepper after the apocalypse. I'm sort of happy. So I feel sorry for y'all adjusting, but for me, I'm like, hey, this is what we do all the time. So,
right.
But no, it's great to be on with you guys. Congrats for the 100, and I hope I get to see you soon.
Yeah, we do too. Thank you very much, Matt.
And Nancy, anything else you want to run through real quick?
Oh no, just that we have the fall semester coming up, and we're virtual at American University. And I'm actually doing 2 sections because I've had such incredible feedback on my class. So American wants me to do more. And I'll be reaching out to all of you because I want creative forces in. So, but congrats to you guys on 100. You asked for like what advice or anything. You just keep doing what you're doing. What I love is that your shows go anywhere and everywhere. You bring in such dynamic people, conversations, and it's also like I feel like I got my friends in my ears when I'm walking, and that's also all of you guys, Fernanda and Chuck, with your podcast. But please keep doing it, and just you've got the magic sauce.
Thank you for everything, Nancy. We'll look forward to joining your class again soon. To go back, I feel that back to school vibe already.
and Nanda, that's the praise to beat. Go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, I prepared a speech.
You need to be the Brock Lesnar of praising the podcast at this point.
Please stop mentioning that name forever. Thank you. Well, next week, like I teased, there will be some news about like where to read my stuff and everything else. Right now, I'm just very focusing on my existential despair.
Yes.
I'm very deep in it, watching a lot of like Lifetime Channel and Kardashian related content. So that's where you can find me now, just buried deep in gin and Kardashian. But I also want to congratulate you guys. I think like Nancy said, it's empty now because I drink fast. Like
me too, Nanda. Ravenclaw forever.
Yes. But I just think that I love what you guys do. I'm with Nancy there. Like it just feels like listening to friendly voices. And honestly, like just continuing to do a thing is so major right now, right? Like 100 episodes, it's so much. And, you know, especially in the podcast space, it's so cluttered. Things keep popping in and out. So just, you know, to be able to live that long, to have that identity and, you know, to create the type of space that you guys are seeing here today. I feel like that's such a big deal. I think you guys are awesome. So not as, you know, as eloquent as Nancy's praise, but
yeah. No, thank you so much. That means a lot. I mean, it's just cool to be able to like offer anybody anything back in return for what they've given you. So you guys have given us all so much. So
yeah,
it just works out. We're still way ahead.
Really quick too, I want to acknowledge that our friend Tanisha Singleton put a comment here for us. She was watching on YouTube, and she said, "Yoo-hoo! Congrats on 100, fellas! Glad to see everyone's faces." Thank you to Tanisha. We've interacted with her.
Oh yeah,
on Nancy's classes and stuff, and she's been a great friend of the show, a Gemini sister of mine, I might add. So So shout out to Tanisha. We appreciate her watching. We appreciate her, her good wishes for the show.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody very much for everything. We're just going to go ahead and sign this thing off. I mean, obviously nobody's going to have watched it to this length, so we don't have to worry about doing it in some sort of seamless or elegant fashion, right? So we're just going to hang up on it like a telemarketing call, right? Like it's just, but no. But thank you, everyone. It means so much, and we will all be together again soon in Chuck's basement, God willing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
There's.
Thanks, you guys.
All right,
We'll see you
well,
at
everybody.
200,
Take care
everybody.
now.
Bye-bye.